Hi, I'm Hannah Paterson. I'm the head of community activation here at TransCap. And I'm just going to give you a quick run through about the summit, how we designed it, what happened, and the next steps. So let me just share my screen so that you can see. So we hosted the inaugural Systemic Investing Summit in the end of January 2024 in Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, in Cambridge, USA. And we had more than 150 asset owners, managers, financial intermediaries, and systems change agents that attended the event. It's been really fascinating. We started kind of planning with a much smaller number in mind, but actually the appetite to engage in the summit has been really overwhelming. So 150 people attended. We were quite deliberate in the way that we designed the event. We wanted to provide the ability for relationships to grow and develop and become kind of more deep rather than fleeting, as is kind of totally necessary when you're doing transformation and systems change work. And therefore, we were really careful about providing a highly curated networking event. And some of that meant that we capped the numbers at 150 to enable people to have, one, the breadth of networking that we would like to have seen, but also so that it wasn't so overwhelming. You were able to kind of talk to the majority of people at the summit, if you so desired, but you're also able to get to know people kind of on a much more deeper level in order to build some of the kind of trustful relationships needed, and to be able to learn about each other's work in a way that would enable future action to happen. We developed the agenda of the summit based on kind of the fertile soil that pioneers of impact investing and adjacent fields have cultivated over the past few decades. The summit put a spotlight on current practice of systemic investing, what it is, what's going on, case studies of those happening in the space. We highlighted in particular work around urban transformation, food and agriculture, and oceans, forest, and biodiversity. But obviously, there was a plethora of different ways that people are using systemic investing, and all of those were able to be platformed and discussed through various parts of the agenda. The second kind of aspect that we covered was around inviting attendees to kind of collectively imagine and push practical and theoretical boundaries and really explore what could be. So focusing on action, collaboration, developing kind of partnerships between and within people. And therefore the agenda throughout the 2 days focused on these two elements, the kind of what is the case studies and the example sharing, and what could be the imagination and collaboration and action. We hosted workshops on kind of overlapping, that's probably the wrong word, kind of transversal topics. So topics of the how you do systemic investing, exploring kind of those key theoretical and practical elements of the work. So these included things like systemic storytelling, how Indigenous wisdom feeds into systemic investing, how do you operationalize systemic investing, what are the research implications or needs for the field, what governance models are required in order to deliver. We had a session on measuring impact and how do you do that for systemic change and transformation, as well as a session on delivering systemic investing in developing countries. So there was a wide range of topics that people could delve into. There was probably a bit of over programming there. There was a lot of kind of, I don't know which one to choose to go to, which is definitely a lesson learned as we move into kind of the next phases of a possible second summit. Then the second day, as I say, really focused on action, and we had designed the summit as an action forum rather than a kind of information transmission. So we weren't there necessarily to broadcast what was going on, but to welcome a conversation between participants about kind of what they were doing and where they could move on. That was a messy, chaotic madness, but a wonderful opportunity to really enable people to put forward things that they were working on. From a design point of view, we had to trust the process. It was a little bit stressful on the day, but we ended up with 18 collaborations being suggested and discussed. They fell into kind of a couple of topics. So looking at research, looking at prototyping, and looking at field building, and kind of some of the big value questions around equity and Indigenous wisdom and privilege, and how that feeds into some of the conversations and the work that we're doing. So that was kind of what we did. We worked with a number of partners. So we convened the summit with MIT Sloan Sustainability Initiative, the Impact and Meridian Institute. We were provided financial support from Climate Works Foundation, and we worked closely with Twist on some of the programming. For Summit 2025, we are again exploring what our partnerships look like. I'm particularly interested in anybody wishing to support us financially, enable us to bring in different voices and provide scholarships for those who wouldn't necessarily be able to attend otherwise. We also made sure that through our programming and procurement, we worked with not-for-profit. So we engaged with an organisation called Loop Lab, which is a Black, Indigenous, people of colour-led non-profit social enterprise that specialise in media and digital storytelling. So they did our photography and video for us. So we had a group of young people there on the day doing that. And we hosted the summit's welcome reception at Artists for Humanity, which was a youth employment charity, and an art gallery, which gave it a really nice creative field. And we were joined by 3 of their young people who supported attendees to create a collective art piece around systemic investing and what the young people had kind of envisaged as we spoke to them about the work. We've had some really good feedback from attendees at the event. Obviously, there's always things that you can improve on. So we've heard some of that as well. Things like, the general event management stuff of the name badges were a bit rubbish, and the signage could be better and all of that stuff. But on the whole, people have been really engaged in the summit and what we've done. So that's been really lovely to hear, and an excellent kind of feedback. If there are a few key takeaways from the summit that I'm going to share with you now that might be helpful for the wider field building effort. So the first is that there's a clear that the moment for bringing systems thinking and practice to the world of sustainable finance has arrived. We've seen that through the attendees and kind of wait list for the summit. 152 people attended the 2.5 days, but we had a large amount of people that we had to turn away because of that capacity element. But also in the follow-up, so we've hosted 2 webinars following up from the summit. This is a recording of one of them. And actually the sign up for that has been absolutely incredible. We've had 256 people sign up to the 2 webinars. And we've done kind of quite limited publicity. So really, really fascinating interest in the sector. We also found from the participants that attended that actually the people that were in attendance were really a really interesting audience, and really spoke to kind of the moment that we were in. And we were lucky enough to be joined by the CEOs of almost all of the world's leading impact investing networks. We had a sizable number of the most progressive wealth owners and family offices, and more than 20 purpose-driven asset managers, and then around 40 innovators and on-the-ground implementers of systems change work. So really, really interesting mix of people, and really speaking to kind of the interest in the space. Secondly, the second takeaway was the key concepts of systemic investing hold appeal and relevance across many system types, societal issues, and actor groups. This was really interesting because it meant that actually we saw people coming into the space from a range of different backgrounds and areas of work. And it demonstrated how systemic investing can be harnessed in service of a wide range of societal goods, everything from kind of regenerative food systems, racial equity, poverty alleviation, sustainable development, thriving oceans, mobility systems, healthcare systems. And that's just naming a few of the topics that we kind of spoke about at the summit. The sense of the room was there's a real essence of systemic investing applying across many geographies, cultural spheres, and it invites work across different systems and therefore kind of connects a lot of the silos that we often find in this space. So you have lots of different entry points, which was a really interesting way to start a conversation because actually that grounding in the tools and the approach and the methodology of systemic investing meant that collaborations and conversations were happening in spaces that maybe they haven't happened or wouldn't have happened without that kind of leveler. The third takeaway, so here's one of the pictures of us at the art gallery with the young people in the background. And Bonnie getting involved in the artwork that was created by the young people and that the attendees could get involved with in making it look beautiful. So the third takeaway was working within a systems frame has a unique power to liberate creative energy and instill a sense of agency. We really found that one of the wonderful challenges logistically for the summit was that we could not get people to stop chatting, whether it was deep dive sessions, co-created workshops, coffee breaks. MIT was constantly abuzz with people sharing, engaging, and getting involved in not just the quantity of talk, but like really deep, meaningful conversations about their work, what could be, and how to get there. Conversations were deeply reflective, thought-provoking, and generally driven by a curiosity to understand and learn more and an eagerness to get into the details of the work. So yeah, that was a really, really interesting and logistical challenge for me, organising the event, trying to get people to be where they needed to be and running on time. But that is possibly all the way. Anecdotally, the CEO of the art gallery that we were in for the welcome dinner did talk about he'd never seen a group of people get so chatty so quickly when there was a mixture of people there. Some people knew each other, but a lot of people didn't. So he said, yeah, this is you've really kicked off the event quite well. So that was really good feedback to hear as well. The fourth, I think we're on number 4. The fourth takeaway is around systemic investing, prompting us to revisit the fundamental purpose of investing. We had a session hosted by Twist, exploring the barriers and enablers to building the field of systemic investing. And that led the attendees on a journey of inquiry, thinking about kind of what is the fundamental purpose of investing. And this session explored what the finance system could be if we used more human and organic language. What would that look like? Which brought up some complexities around kind of what is investing? Is that just for capital return? Is that for social good? How do you balance the two? The discussion was complex and nuanced. There was a lot of mixed opinions across the space. And I think we were able to surface some of the tensions between a new way of thinking and how we frame the purpose of money at large and how that has built on previous work that has gone beforehand, how that is evolving or adapting that work into something different, where we build on what has gone before, what we take and what we would leave behind. And I think, yeah, some real tensions in the room there, and definitely not any conclusions or consensus, but a really interesting starter for 10 on how we continue those conversations. Not that they haven't been happening before, but I think, yeah, a good kind of like reminder that those tensions exist in the work. And actually, that's really good. Like tension is where growth happens, and that challenge and discussion and debate makes the work stronger. So that was an interesting one. And then I think this is the last one. That convenings are vital for building community and seeding collaboration, and the hard work starts afterwards. So in designing the summit, our ambition was to create an experience that could reverberate beyond the official end of the convening. So throughout, we collated ideas for future collaborations. Those ideas came from sessions, from conversations, from workshops, from people submitting them. It resulted in originally 18 discussion points, but as we delved into those, two of them combined into one, which was an excellent example of self-organizing in a room full of 150 people, as they realized that they were definitely a collection together, and merged the groups. So we had 17 discussion tables that explored future action. And as I said at the beginning, that kind of focused on three areas. Firstly, field building. So what are the tools, support, and community that systemic investing needs in order to flourish in the space? Secondly, there were conversations around projects and prototypes, so ideas for new or existing projects and how to apply systemic investing into practice. What does that look like? Who needs to be in the room? And how you move forward. And then there were discussions around underpinning principles. So kind of how do you build equity, justice, and Indigenous wisdom into the work? What does that look like? So some really, really interesting conversations. But as I say, like, it was wonderful to be in MIT, and it was like a really special meeting of minds. But what happens next? And I think we've seen kind of ripples of action beyond the summit. So we've had groups of people gathering around specific things. So we've got groups of people looking at mapping research in the space. What is needed, how we develop that, how do we ensure that there's kind of connection and collaboration across without duplication, so that we can make the most of the work that's ongoing. So we're seeing some really interesting collaboration and action that's coming kind of organically from the attendees at the summit, which is really exciting to see. We've had kind of unprecedented engagement. So we're seeing lots of people attend events like this. And one of the outputs that we've been looking at is how do you do that wider engagement and field building, which is actually linking very closely to our strategy development. I think one of the things I'm grappling with at the moment is, what does this look like for TransCap, but also the wider field? Is this about the breadth of engagement and, you know, mass communication, or is this about deep, meaningful, maybe smaller community building? And how and where do we sit alongside other excellent players in the field to enable the practice to grow, rather than kind of like all working the same crowded space? So lots of work and thinking around that. And if you are interested in that, if you want to help me be a sounding board, if you have thoughts and opinions that you have strongly about that, I would really, really welcome any feedback, discussions, conversations, coffees around that. We have also been looking at how we support and deepen engagement. So there were several collaborations that were explored at the summit that TransCap will be working with, supporting, uplifting, incubating as part of our kind of field building mission. And these kind of fall into 4 different areas of work. So the first being kind of measurement and impact. How do we rethink the definition of membership of measurement on how and management of impact through a systems lens? What does that actually look like? How do we do that in a different way? So there's some work that we'll be kind of leading in that space to kind of really try and explore and unpick it. Prototypes and projects. So we'll be working quite closely with a few people to put theory into practice through real-world systemic investing programs. So, for example, catalysing transformation of the food system in the USA, helping vulnerable communities in low and middle income countries adapt to climate change, improving access and equity into the healthcare system. There's a range of these prototypes that we as TransCap are either kind of taking lead on or supporting others to do so by uplifting their work or providing guidance as we go through. The third one, tools and data. We know that making systemic investing actionable for wealth holders and asset managers might need some support through tools and data frameworks. We'll be kind of looking at where we're best placed to do that. So we're looking at handbooks and guidance and all of the things that might enable people to pick up and run with systemic investing. And finally, we're doing some work around kind of research and conceptual development. So defining and understanding field better through rigorous research, definitional work, taxonomies. And we're working with Twist in order to understand kind of what do we mean by a lot of the concepts that we're talking about through systemic investing. So that is kind of my overview of the summit, what happened, what we managed to achieve, and then some details about outputs and next steps. If you would like more information about TransCap, you can find that on our website, or if you'd like to get in touch with me around kind of community building and field building, or just have feedback for our work, my email address is hp@transformation.capital. Thank you.